Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Canyon Conversation. Today, I am joined by Dr. Danielle Van Vliet and Dr. Robert Shields from the Utah Department of Wildlife Resources Fisheries Experiment Station. They're here to talk to us today a little bit about what the station is about, what they do out there, and some ongoing research. Thank you both for joining us today. We appreciate it. So I'm going to start out by asking Danielle, how did the Fisheries Station get started?
The Logan Fisheries Experiment Station has been here in Logan since the 1960s. It was really developed as a way to help state aquaculture. So back in the 60s and earlier times, the state of Utah, of course, started raising fish, but quickly realized that it's maybe not quite as simple as just, feeding fish. Some things were plaguing the fish, disease, nutritional issues. They were having fish quality problems. So the Fisheries Experiment Station really came into play when the managers decided they wanted to put some effort into figuring out some of these problems and really, trying to investigate what are some better ways that we can produce better quality fish. So we've been here now since the 60s. The mission has changed and grown over the years, but that's what we still really do. We help produce quality fish, and also we do a lot of research projects throughout the state to ensure the quality of the fish, all around.
Great, and I'm sure our anglers all really appreciate that. So tell us a little bit kind of what goes into maintaining those healthy fish populations. What are you guys doing kind of on a day-to-day basis out there?
So I'm part of the fish health team. And what we do primarily is we work really closely with the hatchery managers and also field biologists. And we ensure healthy fish populations. We test them for different pathogens. We're actually mandated by the state to test for certain pathogens. There's a lot of management decisions that go into rearing fish and moving fish across the state or from or into hatcheries. And so in order for that to happen, those fish populations need to be certified free of certain fish pathogens. So our fish health team will go in, we'll work really closely with the managers and biologists, we'll test those fish. We test, a pretty representative group of them. We do all lethal testing, and the fish are certified. Those managers and biologists can move them as they see fit for their management decision. So we're really the first step in a lot of these management goals with the biologists and managers across the state.
Yeah, I'm sure you can't know about a problem until you do those health inspections to sometimes know what's causing a problem or maybe that there even is one. So I know you guys sent along a picture of kind of what a health inspection might look like. I'll go ahead and share that if you would like, and you can tell us what's happening there. Give me just a minute to get my screen share up. All right. Okay. So kind of walk me through what's happening here.
Sure. So this is at one of our state fish hatcheries. We go to each hatchery once a year and conduct an annual fish health inspection. While we're there, we will look at every single group of fish on site. Different species and even different strains of the same species can have differential susceptibility to the pathogens that we look at. So we make sure to get a really representative sample of every single group of fish that's there. And within that, we'll take 60 fish from each group. So again, statistically relevant numbers to make sure that we can be confident that if something is there, we will be able to detect it. So once we sort of figure out what groups of fish we're going to look at, we will collect them from their raceways. We will euthanize them. We do use a chemical that is approved for humane fish euthanasia. Once the fish are completely euthanized, we will disinfect them with 70% alcohol. This ensures that the samples that we collect from inside the fish are not contaminated with anything. And then we primarily will test for sort of two routes of pathogens. We have bacteria that we look for, we have viruses that we look for, and we have parasites that we look for. So we'll open up the fish, we'll do a complete exam, look at all the organs, kind of just make sure that the fish is looking good and healthy. Then we'll take a sample of the kidney. And we take this back to the lab and we look at it for Renibacterium salmoninarum, which is the causative agent of bacterial kidney disease, which is a prohibited pathogen here in the state of Utah. We have been very fortunate thus far that we have yet to detect it. So that's really great news for us.
That's great.
Then we will take another sample of the kidney and a sample of the spleen, and we will bring these back to the lab and we will look for different viruses. Again, we've been very fortunate that we have yet to detect any prohibited viruses here in the state of Utah. Another pathogen that we look for is Myxobolus cerebralis, which is the causative agent of whirling disease, which is probably the most common known fish disease that we have here in the state. We do have it, we've had it for a while. It is a prohibited pathogen at the moment. It lives in the cartilage of the fish, so we'll take a sample of the head. A lot of times people will ask us if we're looking at the brain, but that's a misconception. The parasite does not live in the brain, it lives in the cartilage around the brain. So then we'll bring those back to the lab too, and we'll do a series of really fun digestions and all that kind of good stuff, and we'll look for those spores. So while we're there, we're making sure that, you know, every time we touch a different fish, we get clean tools. If we're gonna change different groups of fish, we'll get different tools. You know, make sure to follow the aseptic technique so there's no cross-contamination. And all the samples that we get, we can be really ensure that they are of strong integrity.
Yeah, so a very controlled environment, so like you said, prevent that cross-contamination.
Yep.
So what happens if you do discover like some of those prohibited pathogens you mentioned? What are the next steps from there?
That's a really good question. So it can really be an entire can of worms. And at this point, we have pretty strict mandates and regulations that we follow if or when we do. It's already, managers of the past have already decided how we're going to move forward if we do find these. And it can range from all different types of things depending on the pathogen that we find. Sometimes it's just an easy management change. Sometimes it could involve completely culling those all the fish that's at the hatchery. Sometimes it means just temporarily shutting down the hatchery. It really is dependent on where we find it and what type of pathogen it is.
Yeah, I'm sure it varies greatly depending on the pathogen, depending on how contagious it is and how it affects the fish. So I'm sure there's a lot of different management decisions there. Overall, though, what are you finding as far as the health of Utah's fish? Pretty healthy?
Yeah, we are actually very, very fortunate here in the state. We have worked really, really hard to, one, keep the fish that we have in state healthy, but also within management, different states will trade fish or move fish across state lines. And we also have a very stringent sort of security process when we do want to bring fish in. They have to be also from pathogen-free sources, and they have to have a pretty extensive health history done on them. So in addition to, managing our own in-state populations, we spend a lot of time working with out-of-state fisheries health professionals to ensure that if we do want to bring anything in, they are also free. So we're sort of, keeping what we have very protected. And sometimes it's very difficult because not very many places can or are as clean and free of pathogens as we are. So it makes it very difficult when we want to move fish into our state.
Yeah, that's very fortunate that we do have such a healthy population. I'm sure it does make it difficult to ensure that, though.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're just a recreational angler, is there anything that you can be doing to kind of prevent any of these pathogens from spreading among our populations?
Yeah, that's a good point. So right now, we really only are worried about whirling disease and its spread. It is in a lot of different waters here in the state. And something that a recreational angler can do is just ensure that if you move from water body to water body, try to clean off your waders, clean off your buckets. Even just letting them completely dry before you use them next is a really big help.
Mm-hmm.
And also not moving fish from one water body to another water body, because those fish could be sick or the water that's in your bucket could contain pathogens, and we don't want that as well.
Yeah, so pretty just common practices. Make sure your gear is clean. Leave it out, let those UV rays from the suns kill anything before you go out in another body of water.
Yep.
Great. All right. Well, is there anything else you wanted to share as far as what you do, Danielle, before we talk a little bit more about some of the research happening at the experiment station?
Sure. So I talked about our inspection role and how we, work with the hatchery managers and the biologists when they just want to routinely move fish. But another component of our team here is working with them when there is active outbreaks. So fish do get sick, and especially, you can imagine when they're in a raceway where they're pretty crowded, sometimes they can be stressed out if, they're being moved or the feed changes or something like that. And it's inevitable. Fish, it's sick just like everybody else does. And so when that happens, our managers don't like it. They're losing fish, they're losing time, and they're losing a lot of money. So they'll give us a call and we'll take a look at these fish, and we can actively work with them to identify what is causing these problems. So I mentioned before, we've been very fortunate not to have those prohibited pathogens, but we do routinely find other pathogens here in our fish. They're not prohibited, so it's not a huge management problem, but they can cause disease, and they often do cause disease. So we can, especially in a hatchery setting, we can identify these problems, and then we can prescribe treatment. So whether that's an antibiotic or a disinfectant, such as chloramine T or formaldehyde or even salt, and work with these hatchery biologists and treat those groups of fish in an attempt to limit those losses. And we do that pretty routinely. It's just a fact of aquaculture. Can't get away from it. And so we are consistently doing diagnostic cases on top of our inspection cases.
Yeah, so it sounds a lot like, any animal care facility, you're going to be just constantly be doing monitoring of your animal health and making those changes in care routines and, as you mentioned, treatments. So I'm sure there's just a lot that goes on behind the scenes from the ground up, from the caretakers to the biologists and everybody at these stations, just trying to keep our fish populations as healthy as they can be.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's really interesting to think about. I come from kind of an animal background myself, but not fish. So it's interesting to think from that perspective.
Yeah, oftentimes people, overlook the fact that fish are animals too, and they can get sick, and you can give them antibiotics, and you can even give them vaccines. And we work, pretty closely with all of that kind of stuff. Like antibiotics and even vaccine use are very regulated in the animal world. So we can't just go out there and, throw anything on them. We work under the direct care of a veterinarian and a certified fish pathologist. So whenever we do find anything, we can confirm the identity of it, and then we consult our fish pathologist and our veterinarian before we can make a recommendation and work with the managers. So, we can't just give them whatever we want.
Yeah, there's a whole team involved and regulations. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing and giving us kind of a glimpse into all that work that you and the team do to keep our fish populations healthy. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk to Robert. So, Robert, you're the kind of the team leader of the research team there at the experiment station. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I have a small team, 2 employees working under me, sometimes a seasonal technician as well. We're a small group of broadly trained aquatic scientists who basically work as consultants, in-house consultants for the aquatic section in DWR. So anything that comes across the desk of a manager or a hatchery manager that's out of the scope of their regular job has a high probability of falling on us, whether it's developing a new aquaculture program or evaluating new technology, or sometimes we end up just starting full-blown experiments because we really don't know the answer to a question. We can't find it in the literature, or there's no other route. It also leads to collaborations with the university, which are very very fruitful usually. So we have several partners at Utah State that help us with projects, and we're very grateful to be here in Cache Valley, where we have such an excellent resource at hand.
Yeah, we're very lucky to be able to utilize that at the university so often too. So I understand you're currently doing a collaboration research project with Utah State. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that project and what you guys are doing?
Yes, the newest project we've got underway is the 5-year statewide angler survey. So this survey dates back to the 60s, kind of like the Fisheries Experiment Station. And originally it was designed to gauge harvest rates and more centered on fisheries management more than anything else. Over the years, it's changed a bit to more of a tool to gauge attitudes of anglers, angler satisfaction, what kind of species anglers like to target, how their experience is affected by crowding or limited access. And this year, we're actually going to be working with Dr. Zach Miller in Department of Environment and Society to retool this survey and get us data that we feel will be more useful in answering these questions.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I don't know if you have an answer, but I'm kind of curious. We've definitely noticed an increase in recreation this year with COVID. Have you noticed any changes with this in your questioning of anglers this year?
Not personally,
Yeah.
but license sales are way up. I can't tell you the exact number off the top of my head, but anybody that's been out in the state angling or hiking or spending time outdoors has definitely noticed an increase in outdoor recreation this year. So hopefully our new survey will try to get us some answers about who these people are that are starting to recreate outdoors that weren't before, and how can we retain those new anglers and keep them interested and keep them angling.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been wonderful, I think, to see so many people connecting with the outdoors. I think it also presents challenges as far as ethics and responsible use. Do you have, I guess, any tips or feedback maybe for new anglers out there this year, or maybe even experience of kind of what they can be doing to maintain those good ethics so everyone can enjoy fishing and our ecosystems and fish stay healthy?
The simplest way I can put it is just remember that these are the resources. These are everybody's resources. So play nice. Let's share the beautiful resources that we have, and think about exploring some more remote places. I think if you're a little concerned about crowding, if you don't like the looks of a shoreline where you usually fish, we've got a lot of less used reservoirs and stream access. You just have to work a little harder to get there. So I guess that's my only advice. Other than that, when you, as an angler, if you're watching this and you see this survey show up, please take the time to fill it out. It may seem pointless, but when we get that data gets used to make decisions, to propose changes to rules, to decide if we need to stock differently or different species. What we really want to do is make sure that we're offering the kind of opportunities that the anglers are looking for. So take the time to do the survey. It's a way to make your voice heard as an angler.
Absolutely, yeah. I couldn't have put it better myself. These natural resources are for all of us to share, so we just need to do that responsibly. Excuse me. And I think it's a great year for a lot of people to, as you said, get out and explore some new areas that maybe you haven't been to before, away from some of those really popular fishing spots. Is there a way we can help share that survey for you, or how do anglers access that survey?
It will be targeted. It'll come from licensed sales data, and we will be drawing a random subsample out of that pool and sending it directly through email to anglers. So, like I said, don't ignore it. Please fill out the survey.
If you get that email, fill it out. Absolutely. Perfect. Well, I really appreciate you guys taking time today. Is there any other research or anything going on that you would like to share with the public today?
Not at this time, no.
Perfect. Well, I know I love getting out and enjoying angling, and I know a lot of people in the valley here do, and we really appreciate the work that you guys do, keeping Utah's ecosystems healthy, not just the fish. I know a lot of other organisms and ecosystem rely on those fish for sure. So thank you again to Dr. Robert Schild and Dr. Danielle Vliet, I'm sorry, I said your name wrong, for joining us today. And we will see you guys, everyone, again here in 2 weeks on YouTube for our next canyon conversations. Bye-bye, everyone.